And this is a Fox News alert breaking overnight. Chaos in the Queen City.
A state of emergency declared in Charlotte as protest over a deadly police shooting turned violent for the second night in a row.
One person shot, now in critical condition.
Nearly 1,000 people taking to the streets overnight, pelting rocks at police, blocking roads and looting stores. 4 officers injured. The National Guard now moving in.
Good morning to you. I'm Heather Childers.
Good morning. I'm Abby Huntsman.
I want to get right out to Leland Vittert. He is live on the ground for us in Charlotte with the very latest at this hour. Good morning, Leland. What's happening now?
Well, good morning, Abby. Good morning, Heather. As you know, Heather, from living here in Charlotte, this is normally a peaceful, quiet, southern, charming town. And it was anything but that last night. And still on the streets now, dozens, if not hundreds, of heavily armed now North Carolina state troopers that they have brought in, not only in riot gear, but also with long rifles as well. I'll give you a sense of the battle lines here. This is actually the place called the epicenter. It's where all the stadiums are, where all the restaurants are, where all the hotels are. And there were pitched street battles going on up and down here. Just up there, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Outside of it, tear gas canisters now, a number of cars smashed. There's really 2 stories here. First was the protest that started around 6 or 7 o'clock tonight, mostly peaceful. Then about 8 o'clock is when the rioting began. By 8:30, there was a shooting with 1 person critically wounded, now on life support. And then it really began to just sort of fly with rockets, tear gas, bottles, fireworks, everything going back and forth between these police and what had really become rioters. There were a number of arrests. About 12:30 is when the police really decided to finally go hands-on, if you will, and stop the looting that had been occurring all over this city. The one thing, though, the protesters say is they're justified.
Whether I'm here, I'm in school, I'm in my car, you said, okay, a man got shot over here, right? So you basically saying, why would I put myself in dangerous way?
Exactly.
Right. Oh, but guess what? At school, in my car, I can still get shot by the police.
By police. Now, the narrative from social media says he was killed while sitting in his car waiting for his son to get out of school while holding a book. The police, and there are pictures and witness accounts to back this up, say he had a gun with him. He got the gun out of the car and then approached officers, and that's when he was shot. There's a lot of people, though, saying, really, what is this about? Is this about no justice, no peace, these protests and then the riots, or is it about something else? Worth noting that outside the Hornets fan shop here, one of the many stores looted, there's some people who are asking, is this about no justice, no peace, or no justice, no free sneakers, Heather and Abby? And of course, there's a huge political component in this. Can't forget that North Carolina is a swing state. We're less than 50 days till the election, as the National Guard is expected on the streets here.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah,
it is.
It's so troubling. And there were some other businesses, as you mentioned. The NASCAR Hall of Fame, I believe, was one where they looted that store. Also, the Westin Hotel, I understand.
There were a number of places that were looted. They tried to break into the Ritz-Carlton. They tried to break into the Omni, a Buffalo Wild Wings, where they tried to grab a lot of liquor bottles. There was a souvenir shop. They grabbed hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of cigarettes out of that. And you have to remember that, especially one thing for the Hornet store, these souvenir shops are much smaller stores. These are people's livelihoods. We saw the same thing happen in Baltimore, is these really looters, for no other idea than taking the 5-finger discount, completely ruin people's livelihoods.
Right. And this is their own town. That's what you always have to question. You know, they're vandalizing their own Walmarts and their own stores, things that they rely on for their own lives. Leland Vittert live for us this morning in North Carolina. Leland, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leland. So troubling, and certainly not a representation of the town I grew up in. Here now to weigh in is former homicide detective Rod Wheeler. Rod, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Sure, good morning. Absolutely.
Let's just begin with your initial thoughts. I mean, you've been at the scene of some of these other riots that have occurred following police shootings across the country. Your take on what is transpiring in Charlotte?
Well, you know, what we see happening in Charlotte is almost indicative of what we saw happening in Ferguson, Missouri and Baltimore, Maryland. But What can the city do to quell the violence there in Charlotte? Real quickly, Heather, there are 3 things that they can do. Number 1, don't stop communicating. Now, the police has been incident. That is a good thing. You have to communicate with the community. Number 2, the investigation has to be transparent. It has to be wide open so people can see what's going on. And then number 3, Heather, the investigation needs to be swift. It doesn't need to take 3 to 4 weeks to investigate a police shooting. If they can do those things and, again, keep communicating, then maybe that will begin to quell the protesters.
Yeah, that is a concern that this will end up turning into something like a Ferguson. So they've called in the National Guard now. Rod, at what point do they make that call to say this is big enough to call in the National Guard, and how helpful is that going to be once they get there?
Absolutely. Those are excellent questions. What is it that prompted the governor to decide to call in the National Guard? Well, we're moving closer towards the weekend. And anytime you have a situation like we see in Charlotte where it's continuing to explode, you got to have reinforcements for your law enforcement. So that's why they decided to call in the National Guard. The National Guard is going to really be placed on standby. We're not going to see them on the front lines like we see the Charlotte police officers. But if the situation does get out of control, then you're going to see more action on behalf of the National Guard. I think it's a good thing, though, Heather, that they are calling them in.
Let's talk a little bit more about the transparency issue that you brought up.
Right.
Just this past July, the governor there, Governor Pat McCrory, passed a law, I think it's HB 972, and it blocks the release of video from police body cameras, also audio as well. Is that a good idea right now? Should they have released that already?
No, they need to release that video because that's going to be critical. That's why the community is in an uproar. Look, there's been 2 different stories that has come out of Charlotte, as Leland just properly reported. You know, the one side of the story from the police is that the suspect had a weapon. The family is saying the suspect had a book. Well, listen, if there's video to substantiate either point, show us the video. You got to be transparent. And once that video is released, I do believe it's going to support the police officer, but then things should begin to quiet down at that point. So any investigation like this has to be very transparent. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have all kind of narratives out there on social media, and then that's just going to keep the flames burning in Charlotte. That's right.
Well, Rod, quickly, before we let you go, if you are the police chief, what are you doing at this very moment? What are you thinking about?
You know, you're thinking about how you're going to move forward. You're thinking about how you're going to work with the community, because this will eventually quiet down, but you still got to be there in Charlotte. You got to work with the community. And like I said earlier, you have to continue to communicate. Yeah.
And we have, in the meantime, a civilian shot by another civilian who is now in the hospital in critical condition as a result of all this.
All right.
That's right. There were weapons out there. There were weapons out there last night. So it's going to be a challenge going forward, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, we appreciate your insight this morning, Rod. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely, guys.
Well, also breaking overnight, the Tulsa, Oklahoma police officer who shot and killed an unarmed black man is speaking out for the very first time. This, as we learned, police found a vial of the hallucinogenic PCP in Terrence Crutcher's car. Officer Betty Shelby's attorney says Crutcher refused to follow more than 24 commands, claiming she was forced to fire the fatal shot when Crutcher stuck his arm through an open car window. Well, his family says the windows were closed. Tulsa police are standing by that officer's story.
The recent police-involved shootings in both Tulsa and Charlotte sparking violent riots and anger all across the country. And this morning, the presidential candidates are speaking out and giving their take. Fox News Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry joins us now live from Washington, D.C. with more on that angle. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Heather. You're absolutely right. I mean, clearly this violence, these protests are happening in the heat of a very close presidential campaign, and Hillary Clinton has been struggling to generate enthusiasm among African-American voters. She's been sending out President Obama as well as First Lady Michelle Obama to deal with that issue, but also in the last couple of days has been calling in to African-American radio talk show hosts around the country to talk about these police-related shootings and insisting that if she's elected, she will put into place reforms to deal with all of this. Not to be outdone, the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, has also been stepping up his outreach to African Americans, saying that Hillary Clinton has been talking about all of this for a long time, but has not acted. And he is saying that he is going to deal with this outreach to the African American communities, not just for votes in November, but also to fix inner cities. Watch.
The inner cities are, I mean, can you say never, but certainly one of the worst stages ever in the history of the inner city. It's so unsafe where you walk down the street and you get shot or your child gets shot. So we're gonna really fix the inner cities. We're going to spend a lot of time. The Democrats have run them for 100 years, mostly uninterrupted. I mean, nobody else. They're just uninterrupted. And you see what's happened.
Still, much we don't know about what happened in both incidents, but we do know that we have 2 more names to add to a list of African Americans killed by police officers in these encounters. It's unbearable, and it needs to become intolerable.
Now, members of the House and Senate here in Washington also jumping on these 2 police-related shootings. We're hearing overnight that members of the Congressional Black Caucus will be heading over to the Department of Justice here in Washington to march on that department and say that they're fed up with these police-related shootings. So this issue clearly not going away. Heather, Abby?
Yeah, that is clear. Ed Henry, thank you.
A lot to say today as well. Thank you, Ed. Well, that does bring us to our look at who is talking this morning. And former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich is slamming Hillary Clinton, saying that she always takes the side of the people against the police without even knowing the full story.
Here's the great challenge for Secretary Clinton. When she was at Yale as a law student, she was a co-editor of an anti-police, left-wing alternative newspaper that described police as pigs. Her natural instinct is to take the side of the people who are against the police. Her first comments about this were anti-police. This is not a country which wants to see what we're seeing here tonight. Now, no matter what the excuse, this is not a country that wants to see looting. It's not a country that wants to see random violence. And again, you mentioned citizen upon a citizen. Well, watch and see how many people die in Chicago this week with no one noticing because they don't fit the current left-wing political mantra. But the fact is, the current system isn't working. It's not working in education. It's not working in jobs. It's not working in safety. And that's why Donald Trump, I think, may do surprisingly well in the inner city, because he's at least offering a chance to dramatically change things.
And let's keep talking about race and politics. Whose message on police and race relations is best? Email us, and we will read your responses a little bit later in the show. Log on to Fox and Friends First Facebook page right after the show as well for a live debate. Use the hashtag #KeepTalking.
Well, brand new Fox News polls are just in, showing Donald Trump taking the lead in several key battleground states. First in Nevada, where Trump has a 3-point lead now over Hillary Clinton, 43 to 40%. Trump has an even lead in 95%. Clinton has 40 and Johnson at 6. And in the must-win state of Ohio, Trump tops Clinton 42 to 37%. That's a big one.
To another Fox News alert now. ISIS could be turning to chemical warfare to target our troops overseas. A rocket with possible traces of mustard gas hitting a base housing U.S. and Iraqi troops near Mosul base. Initial test for mustard gas came back mixed, so it is being sent off for more testing. No one, thankfully, was injured.
Disturbing new evidence in the terror investigation in New York and New Jersey, including new chilling video of a bombing test run. Law enforcement now looking for these 2 potential key players in the case. Jackie Banyas joins us now with the breaking details. Jackie, what are you hearing this morning?
Good morning, Abby. Well, the 2 men discovered one of the bombs on West 27th Street in Chelsea moments before the first bomb went off a few blocks away. The FBI says they ended up stealing the bag. The pressure cooker was inside and then leaving the device behind.
We've looked at the video quite a number of times, and it shows that they were out walking along the street. They saw the bag on the sidewalk. They admired the bag. They opened the bag. They removed what turned out to be a device, a pressure cooker.
Police want to question them as witnesses, not suspects. Also breaking overnight, new images of the bloody and bullet-riddled terror journal Ahmed Rahami had on him, that is, when he was shot. The journal making clear Rahami was not only planning for a shootout with police, but was also sympathetic to ISIS. It comes as new horrifying video emerges of Rahami's backyard in Elizabeth, New Jersey. You can see this here, scorch marks in the ground from an alleged test run. The FBI says they've obtained cell phone video showing Rahami setting off an explosive in his backyard, and you can hear laughing in the background. 2 days after the video was recorded, bombs went off in New Jersey and New York, injuring dozens of innocent people. Within the past few minutes, we've learned Rahami's wife is in Pakistan. She's heading back to the U.S. for questioning. Rahami remains in critical but stable condition this morning and is being held on a $5 million bond.
Some eerie video there. Jackie, thank you for that report.
You can tell people are on edge because yesterday there were at least 2 pressure cookers that were found. There was nothing inside, but at least one overpass was shut down, so people definitely concerned.
Yep, certainly.
The time now is 15 minutes after the top of the hour. As protests rage across the country, Hillary Clinton weighs in.
We do know that we have 2 more names to add to a list of African Americans killed by police officers in these encounters. It's unbearable.
Was she too quick to judge? Our next guest, a former police officer, says yes, and his message for her after the break.
North Carolina under a state of emergency as a peaceful vigil turns violent in Charlotte. Chaos erupting in the streets.
4 police officers injured as nearly 1,000 rioters take to the streets, throwing fireworks, looting the stores, and blocking traffic.
One protester shot in the head in the midst of all this chaos on life support this morning. Police say that bullet was fired by another civilian.
And this is the aftermath from some of that looting: broken glass doors, merchandise thrown from the shelves and onto the floor.
And all of this chaos unfolding after police shot and killed a 43-year-old man that they say threatened them with a gun. His family says that he was unarmed and carrying a book.
Yeah. Another dangerous night in North Carolina. And for more, we want to bring in former Nashville police officer Vincent Hill, who's joining us now. I know this hits close to home for you, having served in North Carolina. First, your response. We've talked so much about the protesters and sort of the violence that's gone on overnight yet again. Take us inside the mind of the police officers. What are they feeling at this moment?
Well, they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. And here's why I say that. I mean, I've been out of policing for a few years, but I'm sure police officers that are very well trained know the difference between a gun and a book. So at what point does the black community want police to say, well, I better not shoot because I could be the next person in the media, but if I don't shoot, I could then lose my life. So essentially what people are asking police to do is give up their rights, not only as a police officer, but as a citizen of the United States, to protect your life against imminent bodily injury or death. It's ridiculous.
And it's really unreal when you look at some of the video that has been sent out on Twitter amongst some other social media networks, specifically of that individual who was shot last night by another civilian there at the scene. He's lying there on the ground in a pool of blood, and they're screaming for the police, the very people that they're, throwing items at and screaming and yelling at, to come over and save him. And they do. They do their job because that's what you do.
That's absolutely right. And it takes me back to Dallas. I mean, look at Dallas, what happened there. 5 officers lost their lives protecting the people that were there protesting against them. That's what police do, protect and serve. They run to danger.
Yeah, what seems so crazy about this, too, is we don't even have all the facts, right? I mean, you have the politics of this, and Hillary Clinton, who is not usually one to come out ahead of a story, came out very early on blaming the police officers for what happened. We have not seen this video. We don't know all the facts behind it. How dangerous is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here we are. We've been going through this for 8 years. I mean, I heard Hillary Clinton say we have to add 2 more names to the list. That just feeds into what we've seen for the last 8 years, that blacks are always the victims. No one wants to take into the account, oh, there was a gun. Oh, there was resisting arrest. Let me ask Hillary Clinton this. Can she name the 500-plus names in Chicago that have been killed this year, blacks by other blacks? Can she name the 11 that were killed last week? No, she can't. But ironically, she wants to name 2 more to this list. But yet we had bombings in New Jersey and New York. She's quick to scream racism, but not quick to scream Islamic terrorism.
Yeah, and someone who we have not heard from yet would be the President of the United States jumping ahead and calling for peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't fit his agenda. Here we have a gun, a black man shot by another black man. It doesn't fit his agenda. It doesn't fit Hillary's agenda to get her into office, saying she supports Black Lives Matter. And you know what's interesting about Black Lives Matter? If you think about it in theory, the only people who have proven time and time again Black lives don't matter are the black community. And why do I say that? 500 plus murders in the city of Chicago, where President Obama is from, committed by black men against black men.
Right.
Who really cares about black lives?
No, that's a good point. You know, you think about last night, it started early on in the evening, peaceful, you know, people out there doing what anyone should have the right to do, and then it turns violent. You have some folks that feel like when they get the green light, they can do whatever they want to do, loot the stores, hurt people. What do we do about it? Because there's a concern this could turn into another Ferguson. So how do we prevent that from happening?
Well, you have to show force and unity through your police, your National Guard. But then what is that going to lead to? More police presence, more people protesting the exact thing they hate. But they're causing it. I've said time and time again on my podcast, crime brings police, not color. That is proven. It's demographics. Crime brings police. Anytime you have people standing in the middle of the highway, jumping on vehicles, throwing rocks at police, you're going to bring more police. It's simple math.
Yeah, they were attacking reporters, photographers, also out there trying to cover the story. Let me ask you this one thing before we let you go. Would a trained police officer know the difference between a gun and a book?
Absolutely. Look, I've been out of policing 10 plus years. A, I still carry a gun. B, I don't forget my training. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I assure you, I know the difference between a book and a gun, and I assure you, any officer that's been on the street more than a day knows the difference.
All right, Vincent Hill, thank you for your service, and thank you for being with us so early this morning.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your
insight.
Always
a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, 25 minutes after the hour, and we are continuing to follow the breaking news out of Charlotte. A state of emergency declared there after a second night of violence.
On the ground at the scene, up next.
Thursday, September 22nd. This is a Fox News alert. Breaking overnight, a state of emergency declared in Charlotte as protest over a deadly police shooting turned violent for a second night in a row.
One person shot, now in critical condition. The National Guard moving in.
Good morning. I'm Abby Huntsman.
And I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much for joining us for this early edition. We want to get right out to Leland Vittert for you, though, who is live on the ground in Charlotte with the very latest breaking details. Leland?
Well, Heather, this is what they call the epicenter of Charlotte, because that's actually what this complex is named, with all the sports arenas, the restaurants, the clubs. It's also the epicenter of the rioting overnight here. You can see one of the many stores that was looted. This was a souvenir shop. It appears as though the rioters wanted some Red Bull and some cigarettes, and they do what rioters do, which is take the five-finger discount here. And while this is one picture that will go national about Charlotte, this is a city of major commerce, not only in terms of the southeast, but around the country. Bank of America, those kinds of things here. And just to give you an idea of where we're at in terms of being at the center of town, this is the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and outside of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, evidence of the pitched street battle that has gone on here for about 5 hours this evening between these rioters and the police. Here's one of the many tear gas canisters that was thrown. Some video from earlier. It started out as a peaceful protest and then was anything but. They certainly needed the cavalry, didn't have it. The cavalry is arriving now. The National Guard being called up under a state of emergency by by the governor. And as we look at what happened overnight, you saw the police really hold back between 8 and about 10 o'clock. That's when that one person was shot by another protester, rioter, call them what you will. It wasn't until about 12:30, after much of the looting had occurred, that the police finally came in and made some of the arrests. The original spark to this, and it's fair to say that this has gone way beyond this now, is Keith Scott, a black man in his 40s who was shot and killed by police. Now, the social media narrative went something along the lines of he was sitting in his car holding a book, waiting for his son to get out of school, and was shot. The police narrative is very different, and they seem to think that they have not only the pictures, but also the witness accounts to back up that Mr. Scott had a gun.
What I can tell you is everything that we have, all the evidence supports the version that we heard from witnesses, from our officers, and from the evidence that we found on the scene. It's not my job really to dispute anybody's version.
And now the Charlotte police chief is going to have to figure out how to restore order to his town. We've had 2 nights of looting and rioting. Before, of course, Heather, you might remember, it was at a Walmart about 15 or 20 minutes out of town near where Mr. Scott lived. Now it is in a downtown area, and you can imagine the economic impacts and also the political impacts of these images that are going all around the country about Charlotte. Have to remember, Charlotte is in North Carolina, as you know, a swing state with less than 50 days till the election.
A town that you know well, Heather. You can hear the sirens behind you, Leland. What is the environment like at this moment, these early hours? You can see some of the tear gas you showed us on the ground. Have things pretty much totally calmed at this point?
Things have really calmed down. It was about 2 a.m. that the last protesters went away, and the police have stayed out. There's been an incredibly heavy police presence. About every 15 or 20 yards, you can see police or North Carolina state troopers there, either in riot gear or with high-powered rifles over their shoulders, those kinds of things. You get the sense that the police really were caught unprepared for the level of violence that occurred last night, and then they brought in overwhelming force to try and riot. You do, this is a bit of a town in shock. They just did not understand that things could happen the way they happened over the past couple of hours, and the amount of lawlessness that occurred. Just about 20 yards in front of me is where the Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets basketball team, plays, a big arena. There, one of the Hornets stores, the fan shop, also knocked over by folks who wanted free sneakers. And there's a lot of questions now about really what these protests are about. Is this about a protest about a man who was killed by police, or is this just about an excuse to riot, ladies?
Right. And the team there, of course, owned by Michael Jordan, who just donated a very large sum of money to Black Lives Matter as well. Leland Vittert, Live Force, will check back in with you. Thank you so much. Fox contributor Webb joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. David, Leland mentioned some of the evidence that seems to support what the police are saying, although we have not seen the video yet. That is yet to be released. There are pictures that have been released of this gun that was found on the ground outside of the car involved, and also police saying that there was no book found.
Yeah, and this is what we're starting to see developing, and more reports come out about witnesses corroborating what the officers have said. And to be fair, we haven't seen it yet, but we have to also separate what's going on. We had where the original incident was, and now they've moved it into what's the uptown area of Charlotte, a more upscale commerce area, the area that Leland was talking about. So they're traveling there about 10, 15 minutes, which means the police have to take control of the paths of travel. You can't block all traffic, but you can observe where people are coming from. And then we have to separate the protesters who may have doubts and questions from rioters. And when you have a rioter shooting another protester or someone else who's in there, another civilian, now the police have to have a concern of who's coming there armed. And that changes the dynamic. The police waited a little bit too long. They should have been in there in stronger force. They should have taken down this riot, because it was not a protest when they start blocking streets, when you start breaking into businesses. The police have have to take control of the situation, and that's something they're going to have to get ahead of coming into the next night.
How do you win, though, David? Because then they're accused,
Well, the win is for the community. When someone's breaking the law, they're no longer a protester. And I don't know the exact state laws on rights to gather, whether it's permits or your right to do it freely. We've seen this. I've been to North Carolina for Moral Mondays, for these other groups. They've done their protests peacefully. They've marched for hours. They've done it. The police have to control it when it goes to lawlessness, damaging property, anything like that, even fighting and rioting amongst the protesters. That is no longer legal. They have to cut down. They have to take control of that immediately.
Davis, we don't have all the facts yet, but what is the protocol, the proper protocol for police? If this man did in fact have a gun on him, what are police trained to do in that moment? Are they supposed to pull out a gun as well? What are they told to do?
Well, there's a term I would encourage everyone to look up and learn more about. And if you have a police officer friend, or you can a lot of times go to the police websites, department websites, and it's called use of force. If someone has just got bare hands, then you deal with them a lot differently than you have someone with a knife. But the minute someone pulls out a gun, you've escalated to the point where the police are not going to just pull out a taser and say, well, maybe we can tase him. That's not what they're taught to do. It's what gets police officers killed. And we, time and time again, we've seen cases where someone with a knife is even shot, or someone with a gun is shot, and because it doesn't hit any vital organs, they're able to kill the police officer. So the police are trained to use the force that is required and escalate to the level where they're able to control the situation.
Yeah, Heather, this comes at a time when police have got to be on edge. How many times now we've heard they've been called to a home to protect someone, and they open the door and they get shot. It's a new reality that they face.
Well, the reality the police face is a dangerous environment where someone who, say, may be on the edge of going over the line, as you're talking about opening a door, whatever the case may be, feels emboldened. Here's a sad part of this that we need to pay attention to. As a result of Black Lives Matter and as a result of this anti-police sentiment that has led to the assassination of multiple police officers and multiple incidents of assaults on police officers, you now have an environment where people feel emboldened. There are people who believe the false narrative that police are shooting blacks randomly. When you look at reports of top 70 cities and analysis of the top 70 cities in America, you've got about of the people shot are white, and only about 26% are black. And you look at the propensity of crimes, kind of rioting, destruction of property. I've seen this play. We've all seen this play. Ferguson, Baltimore, Milwaukee, and beyond. That is not a way to resolve the issue.
Yeah, and in this case, it was a black officer shooting a black suspect. And, social media also feeding that false narrative. So we have to do something about that as well.
All right, David Webb, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, also breaking overnight, the Tulsa, Oklahoma police officer who shot and killed an unarmed black man is speaking out for the very first time. This, as we learned, police found a vial of the hallucinogen PCP in Terrence Crutcher's car. Officer Betty Shelby's attorney says that Crutcher refused to follow more than 24 commands, saying that she was forced to fire the fatal shot when Crutcher open car window. Now, his family claims the windows were closed. Tulsa police are standing by the officer's story.
Well, the recent police-involved shootings in both Tulsa and now Donald Trump, he is calling for action, and Hillary Clinton takes sides. Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, Abby. You're absolutely right. All of this, of course, happening in the context of a very heated presidential campaign. And one of the problems for Hillary Clinton, as Donald Trump has been closing on her in battlegrounds like North Carolina, is that she is simply not putting together the so-called Obama coalition, not generating enthusiasm among African-American voters in particular. So she has been sending the president out on the trail, First Lady Michelle Obama as well. And she is saying in radio interviews with African-American radio talk show hosts that she will put reforms in place to deal with these police-related shootings. Donald Trump being very aggressive, though, about saying that Hillary Clinton is all talk, has been in office as a senator for a long time, then Secretary of State, has not done a lot to deal with all of these difficult issues. And in a town hall with our own Sean Hannity that will be broadcast this evening, Trump made clear that he's tired of the Democrats suggesting he's a racist. Watch.
When you start to win and win and win, and they have nothing to say and they can't stop you, they always start using the racist word. And it's a very interesting phenomenon, but the word racist comes out, and that means that you're winning, and that's their last chance. And I don't think it's working.
We've got to do better. And I know we can. And if I'm elected president, we will. I know I don't have all the answers. I don't know anyone who does. But this is certain. Too many people have lost their lives who shouldn't have.
Now, Hillary Clinton still has a large advantage over Donald Trump with African-American voters, but there was a poll just in the last week by the Los Angeles Times and the University of Southern California that suggested Donald Trump, for the first time, is making major gains with African-Americans as he steps up this outreach. Heather, Abby?
And we'll see what happens following the incidents in Charlotte as well.
All right, Ed, thanks so much for that report.
Great to see you.
All right, we want to keep talking about race and politics. Whose message on police and race relations is best? Email us and we'll read your responses later on in the show. Also log on to the Fox and Friends First Facebook page right after the show for a live debate using the hashtag Keep Talking.
3 days until the first presidential debate, just 3, and Hillary Clinton has just revealed her biggest concern. She thinks that the moderators will, quote, lower the bar for Donald Trump.
Sometimes they are not, the questions she gets aren't difficult, but they are particularly aggressive, and I think that's meant to make up for questions that he can get that can be perceived as difficult for him to answer.
Clinton's communications director says that Clinton is going to get more pointed questions since she's released more policy specifics than Trump. The two will finally face off this Monday at Hofstra University.
We'll be watching. Now to a Fox News alert. ISIS could be turning to chemical warfare to target our troops. A rocket with possible traces of mustard hitting a base housing U.S. and Iraqi troops near Mosul. A Pentagon official says they found, quote, tar-like black oily substance on a shell that landed just feet from the base. Initial tests for mustard came back mixed, so it's being sent for more testing. Luckily, no one was hurt.
Disturbing new evidence in the terror investigation in New York and New Jersey, including chilling video of a bombing test run.
Law enforcement now looking for 2 potential key players in the case. Jackie Banyas joins us live now with some breaking details. Jack, what are you hearing this morning?
Good morning, Abby and Heather. Well, the 2 men discovered one of the bombs on West 27th Street in Chelsea moments before the first bomb went off a few blocks away. The FBI says they ended up stealing the bag. The pressure cooker was inside, and then leaving the device behind and taking the bag. Police want to question them as witnesses, not as suspects. Also breaking overnight, new images of the bloody and bullet-riddled terror journal Ahmed Rahami had on him when he was shot. The journal making clear Rahami was not only planning for a shootout with police, but was also sympathetic to ISIS.
Handwritten journal found on Rahami at the time of his arrest, talking about, among other things, jihad, pipe bombs, a pressure cooker bomb, as well as laudatory references to Anwar al-Awlaki and Osama bin Laden.
This comes as new horrifying video emerges of Rahami's backyard in Elizabeth, New Jersey. You can see scorched marks there on the ground from a reported test run. The FBI says they've obtained cell phone video showing Rahami setting off an explosive in his backyard. And you can hear laughing in the background, we're told. 2 days after the video was recorded, bombs went off in New Jersey and New York, injuring dozens of innocent people. That surveillance video of that blast. Within the past few minutes, we've learned Rahami's wife in Pakistan is heading back to the U.S. for questioning. As for Rahami, he remains in critical but stable condition this morning and is being held on $5 million bond. Ladies, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. All right, 15 minutes now to the top of the hour. And we continue to follow the breaking news out of Charlotte. Unrest in the Queen City as riots rage overnight.
The latest breaking details from Charlotte up next.
With children. I don't know what that was, but it came from the direction of the protesters. Now, those are
Violence and riots on the streets of Charlotte for a second night in a row. The governor of North Carolina declaring a state of emergency, calling in the National Guard, which I understand is arriving right now. Protesters hurling tear gas and fireworks, looting stores, blocking off traffic overnight. 4 police officers injured, none, though, with life-threatening injuries. But there was one protester who is on life support at this hour. Police say that protester was shot in the head by another civilian. All of this unfolding after police shot and killed a 43-year-old man that they claim threatened them with a gun. His family, though, says that he was unarmed and that he was carrying a book.
And turning now to the campaign trail, just 47 days until the election, and brand new Fox News polls show more good news for Donald Trump in the key battleground states of Nevada, North Carolina, and Ohio. Of how affect for an electoral college map, here is Fox News correspondent Shannon Bream.
Brand new Fox News polls showing Donald Trump now enjoying modest leads over Hillary Clinton in Nevada, North Carolina, and Ohio. Let's take a look for other changes all across the country as we review our electoral college map, where 270 remains the magic number to win the White House. There have been some shifts, so let's talk about those first. Then we'll tally up the nationwide totals. Both New Hampshire up here and Colorado out west, they have shifted from leaning Democrat to toss-up, meaning they now could go either way. This week also brings a shift in Iowa, where Trump has actually been polling well. It goes from a toss-up to leaning Republican. And finally, a change in Minnesota. That moves from solidly Democrat to leaning Democrat. So where does that put us overall? Well, the solidly Democrat and leaning Democrat states are the ones in dark blue and in light blue. They total 260. That is down 13 votes from last week. This week, the toss-up states, those are the yellow ones all over the map, well, they're at 108 votes. That is up from 101 last week. And that's the red states. They are viewed as solidly GOP. You see them through the heart of the country. That total there is 154. It's the same as last week. But the leaning GOP total is up from 10 to 16. So you take the combined solid and leaning GOP tally from last week, 164. This week it goes to 170. So based on these numbers alone, clearly Clinton has more avenues to getting to 270. But for now, the trend is moving in Trump's favor. So we'll see if that continues after the first debate on Monday.
Can't believe it's almost here. Meantime, her IT guy may have gone online for help on how to wipe records clean. And now the House Oversight Committee is ordering Reddit to bring back deleted posts believed to be from technician Paul Combetta. One post is saying, quote, "I need to strip out a VIP's very VIP email address from a bunch of archived email." Basically, they don't want the VIP's email address exposed to anyone. Now, that post made just one day after Clinton was ordered to hand over all her Benghazi-related emails.
Well, President Obama turning his national security focus to climate change, the commander-in-chief ordering 20 federal agencies to make a plan to protect the United States over the next 3 decades. Critics say he should be focusing on other threats like terrorism, but the Obama administration claiming drought and extreme weather contributes to extremism.
Well, the time now is about 8 minutes until the top of the hour. Very busy news morning for you. Breaking overnight in Charlotte, peaceful protest turned violent. One person shot, now in critical condition.
Our live breaking news coverage with complete analysis continues right after the break. State of emergency as a second night of violence and chaos erupts in Charlotte overnight. While you were sleeping, the National Guard arriving to try and take control of the city that is now on edge after nearly 1,000 protesters took to the streets, throwing fireworks, looting stores, and blocking traffic. 4 police officers are hurt. None of their injuries are life-threatening, but one protester is now on life support this morning. Police say they were shot by another civilian. And chaos after shot a 43-year-old man that they claim threatened them with a gun. His family says he was unarmed and carrying a book.
Well, there's some brand new details for you from overnight about the pilot killed after a spy plane came crashing down 17,000 feet out of the air. Lieutenant Colonel Ira Eady and another pilot ejected from the U-2 Dragon Lady jet during a training mission from Beale Air Force Base in California. Now, the other pilot was injured but is expected to be okay. The cause of that crash is still under investigation.
Chicago is adding nearly 1,000 cops to its force to combat a surge in violence. 970 positions now being added over the next 2 years on the heels of a dramatic spike in shootings. The Windy City recording more than 500 homicides so far this year alone, more than New York and L.A. combined. Well, Mayor Rahm Emanuel did not say how the financially struggling city plans to pay for those new hires. Well, the hero police who killed the Minnesota mall terrorist is already ready to get back to work. Officer Jason Falconer returning to his gun range and training facility yesterday to a flood of well wishes from community members thanking him for his bravery. Falconer was off duty and shopping for his son's birthday gift Saturday night when he took down the 22-year-old terrorist.
No charges for a teacher who outraged parents after stepping on the American flag during history class. North Carolina officials say that Lee Francis from Massey Hill Classical High School will not be charged since his actions are protected by federal law. Francis asked students for a lighter during his lecture on free speech, and when no one had one, he threw the flag on the ground and then he stomped on it. He is on administrative leave. Well, there's some new controversy surrounding the murder investigation that captivated America.
We have 5 different motives in this one crime. We want to get the truth out so that JonBenet could rest in peace.
Burke Ramsey, the brother of murdered child beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey, suing CBS for claiming in a documentary series that he killed his sister, as JonBenet was found dead in the family home back in 1996 after an apparent argument with 9-year-old Burke. No one was ever charged.
Such a horrible story that was. Well, the Brangelina bombshell taking yet another dramatic turn this morning. The so-called other woman actress Marianne Cotillard breaking her silence after rumors swirling that she was having an affair with her allied co-star Brad Pitt.
On Instagram, Cotillard shot those rumors down, those saying, quote, "Many years ago, I met the man of my life, father of our son and of the baby we are expecting. He is my love, my best friend, the only one that I need." And she also announced that she was pregnant and had some well wishes for Brad and his soon-to-be ex-wife, Angelina Jolie.
And even their wax figures are feeling the heartbreak. Madame Tussauds confirming they, too, have called it quits. That was a rough story for everybody.
Yes, it truly was. But we're going to switch gears completely, though. Thank you so much, meantime, for watching this special edition, this early edition of Fox and Friends First.
And our coverage continues right now.
And it is Thursday, September 22nd, and this is a Fox News alert breaking overnight. Chaos in Charlotte. Shots ring out at protesters over a deadly police shooting. A state of emergency declared. Night turned violent. 4 officers injured and 1 protester now on life support. We are live on the ground as the National Guard moves in.
And the presidential candidates weighing in on all the violence.
I would do stop and frisk. I think you have to.
We have 2 more names to add to a list of African Americans killed by police officers. It's unbearable.
Donald Trump calling for action, but was Hillary Clinton too quick to judge? We report, you decide.
And some brand new Fox News polls showing who is pulling ahead in crucial battleground states. Fox and Friends First continues right now.
Good morning. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm Abby Huntsman.
And I'm Heather Childers. Very busy morning for you. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. Let's get straight to that Fox News alert for you. Just moments ago, the National Guard moving into Charlotte, North Carolina, the city under a state of emergency this morning after a second night of violent police protests.
Rioters taking over the streets, looting, throwing fireworks, one person opening fire on another protester.
Yeah, Leland Vittert is live for us in Charlotte with the very latest breaking details. So, Leland, what can you tell us is happening right now?
Ladies, good morning to you. Now is the calm after the storm, really a pitched battle here on the downtown streets of Charlotte. Very different than any we've seen in any of these anti-police riots before. This is one of the many shops here that line the streets of downtown, a bodega, if you will, a souvenir shop, in what they call the epicenter, and this is where all the restaurants are, the hotels are, the clubs are, and then also a number of the sports stadiums are as well in this downtown. This is where the protesters turned into rioters at about 8 o'clock last night, and you get a sense of where we're at. This is the Ritz-Carlton Hotel here in town, and on the streets outside of the Ritz-Carlton, which will certainly be something that folks who are thinking of planning a conference in Charlotte or talking about doing business here will realize. A lot of tear gas canisters outside of the Ritz-Carlton, not something you see very often. The police here really needed some reinforcements. They needed the cavalry, and the cavalry is arriving in the form of the National Guard, called out by the governor here, who has declared a state of emergency. They have started to deploy, and we're expecting to see them on the streets in the coming hours. Last night, things certainly got out of control, and the police, it seemed as though, were pretty unprepared or certainly didn't expect the kind of violence that we saw break out around 8 or 8:30 after that protest started. As you saw what was happening on the street, you also heard from police officers some complaints that they were being told to really hold back and not get aggressive with protesters who had turned into rioters and looters. It was much later until we saw arrests by the police here on the streets of Charlotte. The other thing to keep in mind as you watch this video is exactly the tactics the police are using in terms of firing tear gas out into the crowd, and the protesters, you can tell, are incredibly angry. There was one who was shot by another rioter, and yet despite all that and despite the looting, when you talk to them, they say pretty much they're justified.
Whether I'm here, I'm in school, I'm in my car, you said, okay, a man got shot over here, right? So you basically saying, why would I put myself in dangerous way?
Exactly.
Right. Oh, but guess what? I could be at work, at school, in my car, I can still get shot by the police.
Now, what all sparked this a couple of days ago was the shooting of this man, a 40-year-old black man in his 40s named Keith Scott. He was allegedly, according to social media, sitting in his car waiting for his son to come home from school reading a book. The police will tell you, and pictures that are now circulating will prove, is that he had a gun with him there in that car. And according to police, he did not follow orders to drop the gun, and then he was shot at that time. Important to sort of put this in a larger context here in terms of where we're standing. Downtown Charlotte now. This right here is where the Hornets play, the professional basketball team owned by Michael Jordan. Ladies, also, their fan store looted as well tonight. And some people saying, hey, is this a matter of no justice, no peace, or no justice, no free sneakers? Is that really what most of the people on the street seem to be interested in? Back to you.
All right, Leland Vittert live for us there in Charlotte. Leland, thank you.
Yeah, hurting the very community that they live in. Well, now in the last hour, I do want to clarify this. Michael Jordan donated, I mentioned, to the Black Lives Matter movement. Jordan actually donated $1 million to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and he also donated $1 million to the International Association of Chiefs of Police's newly established Institute for Community Police Relations. So working hard to bring that community together.
Yeah, we do now want to bring in former homicide detective Rod Wheeler. Rod, good to see you. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, how important right now is it for the police chief and for others to be as transparent as possible? We don't know all the facts yet. We've not seen the video, but for people to understand why they are protesting, how important is it to understand the facts here?
Oh, it's very important. As a matter of fact, if the police, the chief of police continue to communicate with the community there, then what he will find is that the community may kind of calm down in terms of the protest. That's very important in a situation like this. You have to be very transparent. You have to communicate. And you know what? The investigation must be very swift. Now, real quickly, something that nobody has talked about is the actual young police officer that fired his gun. Now, this police officer is going to be talked to today by the investigators there in Charlotte, but I just learned that the police officer is only a 2-year veteran of the force, so he is a relatively young officer, and that's going to definitely have a significant impact in this investigation.
What difference would that make then, only 2 years in? Would they be less prepared?
Right. No, not necessarily less prepared, but their experience level is going to be obviously lessened. And so as a result of that, you got older officers, more seasoned officers on the scene, which we saw yesterday, and they didn't fire their weapons, but the younger officer did. So the question is going to come up as to whether or not this officer should have been released from being on probation, which he was on probation for a year before he was released to be out there on his own.
And the officer in question already well known within the community before he became a police officer for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department as well. Right. Let's talk a little bit more about why the videotape itself has not been released yet, just so people understand. The governor of North Carolina just in July passed this law, or signed it into law, where video, also audio, cannot be released readily.
Right. And you know what? That video needs to be released, because that's going to be critical in terms of keeping the community calmed down, because if they do have the video, and the chief of police said yesterday that they do have video from body cameras that was not worn by the officer that did the shooting, but worn by other officers, they need to release that, because apparently those videos show where this individual did have a weapon in his hand when the officer fired that fatal shot yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I spoke with one person who's seen that video and does confirm that that is the case. Also, there are pictures of the gun on the ground outside of the car.
Right.
All right, Rod Wheeler, thanks for being with us so early this morning.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Also breaking overnight for you, the Tulsa, Oklahoma police officer who shot and killed an unarmed black man is speaking out for the very first time. This, as we learned, police found a vial of the hallucinogen PCP in Terrence Crutcher's car. Officer Betty Shelby's attorney says that Crutcher refused to follow more than 24 commands, saying that she was forced to fire the fatal shot when Crutcher stuck his arm through an open car window. Well, his family claims that the windows were closed. Tulsa police are standing by the officer's story.
The recent police-involved shootings in both Tulsa and Charlotte sparking violent riots and anger across the country. Now Donald Trump is calling for action as Hillary Clinton takes sides. Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, Abby. Well, it's interesting because this is all playing out, of course, in the context of a very heated presidential campaign. And Hillary Clinton has been struggling to generate enthusiasm, particularly among African-American voters. In the last couple of days, then, she has been calling in to African-American radio shows around the country, talking about these police-related shootings, both in Tulsa and Charlotte. It's something she's talked about throughout the campaign as a broader issue, but particularly stepping it up now as she deals with potential turnout problems with African-American voters. That's why she's also been trying to get President Obama out on the campaign trail more and more. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has been stepping up his outreach to African-American voters, having some success with that in a couple of recent polls. And he did a town hall meeting that he taped last night with our own Sean Hannity. It's airing this evening, but he basically said that when Hillary Clinton talks about helping African-Americans, from her and other Democratic politicians, it's all talk. Watch.
The inner cities are, I mean, can you say never, but certainly one of the worst stages ever in the history of the inner city. It's so unsafe, where you walk down the street and you get shot, or your child gets shot. So we're gonna really fix the inner cities. We're gonna spend a lot of time. The Democrats have run them for 100 years, mostly uninterrupted. I mean, nobody else. They're just uninterrupted, and you see what's happened.
There is still much we don't know about what happened in both incidents, but we do know that we have 2 more names to add to a list of African Americans killed by police officers in these encounters. It's unbearable. and it needs to become intolerable.
And breaking overnight, we're learning this morning that members of the Congressional Black Caucus here in Washington are planning to go to the Department of Justice to march on that department, protest these recent police-related shootings. Clear sign, Abby and Heather, that this issue is not going away, especially in a very divided election cycle.
Yeah, just days to go before the election. Very true. Ed, thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, we want to keep talking about race and politics. Whose message on politics and race relations is best? Email us and we'll read your responses later on in the show. And log on to the Fox and Friends First Facebook page right after the show for a live debate using the hashtag Keep Talking.
Now to another Fox News alert for you. ISIS could be turning to chemical warfare to target our troops. A rocket with possible traces of mustard gas hitting a base housing U.S. and Iraqi troops near Mosul. A Pentagon official says that they found, quote, tar-like black oily substance on a shell that landed just feet from the base. Initial tests for mustard gas came back mixed, so it's being sent off for more testing. No one, thankfully, though, was injured.
Also developing right now, the New Jersey, New York bombing suspect's wife is heading back to the U.S. for questioning, and it comes as disturbing evidence emerges in the terror investigation, including chilling new video of a bombing test run. You can see what happens, what appears to be scorch marks in Ahmad Rahami's backyard, and we're also getting images of the bloody and bullet-riddled terror journal Rahami had on him when he was shot. The journal making clear Rahami was sympathetic to ISIS, and law enforcement now looking for these two potentially key players in the case. The FBI says they stole the bag one of the bombs was in, leaving the bomb behind. They want to question them as witnesses, not suspects. Rahami does remain in critical but stable condition and is still refusing to talk.
And quoting an al-Qaeda leader in that journal. Well, the time now is about 11 minutes after the top of the hour, and we have some brand new Fox News polls showing Donald Trump ahead in crucial battleground states.
Our next guest with what he needs to do to win the White House. That's next. If you can believe it, just 47 days now until the election, and brand new Fox News polls showing Donald Trump taking the lead in key battleground states.
Yeah, this is really something. Trump topping Hillary Clinton in Nevada, North Carolina, and the all-important Ohio, which could make or break his win. Cliff Young is the president of Ipsos Public Affairs, and he joins us this morning to break it all down for us. Thank you for joining us, first of all.
Well, thank you. Great to be here.
Well, let's take a look first at Nevada, where we have Trump up 43% over Clinton with 40%, followed by Johnson, and then 4% voting for none. And then North Carolina as well, where Trump is up 45%, Clinton 40%, Johnson 8%. So Trump, he's had a couple of good weeks. Hillary Clinton, not so much.
Yeah, really, really good news for Trump at the state level and at the national level. Let's step back a bit and take a 30,000-foot view. He came out of the conventions in a rough place. He did not have a good convention cycle, weak at best. The con issue really hurt him in the short term. He didn't have that base energized. But over the last 3 weeks, he's really energized the base. The speech in Arizona, the trip to Mexico is key, crucial for really pumping his base up. That's reflected at the national level. We're at a near tie, and now it's starting to manifest itself or reflect itself at the state level. Those states are key for him if he's going to construct that map for November.
Cliff, as they say, if you don't win Ohio, you cannot go on to win the White House. This is a state that everyone is watching very closely. And you look at our latest polling there, Trump up 42%, 37%, what now, up 6 points now. You look at the trend line, he's continuing to tip up in that state. What is going on there?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, key to have Ohio. He does not win the White House if he does not have Ohio. His message is on target for the Ohioans. The system is broken. The system is rigged against the common man, the working person. He's there to fix it. Those sorts of themes, those sorts of system are broken themes, together with kind of strong, concrete economic objectives and messages really resonate with a Rust Belt state like Ohio.
A similar demographic to Pennsylvania, which, as we've mentioned, also key for Donald Trump if he should win this race. The last time around in the last presidential election, we talked a lot about Virginia, but this time it's Pennsylvania.
Yeah, for me, it's either Pennsylvania. He needs to get Pennsylvania and or some sort of combination of Colorado, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Again, reinforcing the system is broken, concentrating on economic policy will be key. And obviously, the debates coming up. Typically, I would say debates are not that important. For this electoral cycle, they're key. Donald really needs to do a good job to keep his momentum going, and we'll see, obviously.
If he doesn't win Ohio, do you think he can win Pennsylvania?
I think if he doesn't win Ohio, it's game over. He really needs Ohio, Florida, and North Carolina to stay even with Hillary. And then, as I was saying, either Pennsylvania or some sort of combination of Colorado, Wisconsin, or Michigan.
Yeah, well, as of now, he's up 5 points in Ohio. It's a good place to be before the debate start. But anything can happen at this point, as we know.
You think?
Yeah, anything can happen.
Yep.
But I'll just reinforce a point I've made a number of times here. He's an earned media superstar. I expect he's going to do a great job during the debates, and I expect him to keep his momentum going from that point on.
We shall see. Cliff Young, thanks for being here so early. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you so much. It was great.
We'll bring you back to see if you're right.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, obviously.
We'll see. All right, the time now, almost 20 minutes after the hour. Coming up, forget terror. Climate change is the real national security threat, at least according to the president. And a teacher sparking national outrage after stomping on the American flag. He says it was all part of the lesson plan. There's a big update on this story.
Stay with us.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. First, we're back with this. Her IT guy may have gone online for help on how to wipe records clean. And now the House Oversight Committee is ordering Reddit to bring back deleted posts believed to be from technician Paul Combetta. One post says, quote, "I need to strip out a VIP's very VIP email address from a bunch of archived emails." Basically, they don't want the VIP's email address exposed to anyone. Well, that post made just one day after Clinton was ordered to hand over all Benghazi-related emails.
President Obama turning his national security focus to climate change. The commander-in-chief ordering 20 federal agencies
What would Martin Luther King Jr. say about all of this? Well, his niece, Dr. Alveda King, joins us live with a powerful message from the protesters next. Thursday, September 22nd, and this is a Fox News alert, a state of emergency in Charlotte after another night of violent protests, and this time, shots fired. We are live on the ground as the National Guard moves in.
The presidential candidates weighing in on the violence.
I would do stop and frisk. I think you have to.
We have two more names to add to a list of African Americans killed by police officers. It's unbearable.
Donald Trump calling for action, but was Hillary Clinton too quick to judge? We report, you decide.
And this is brand new Fox News polls show who's pulling ahead in crucial battleground states, and Hillary Clinton's team reveals her biggest fear heading into the debate. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
Good morning. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this very busy Thursday morning. I'm Heather Childers.
Good morning. I'm Abby Huntsman. Thanks for starting your day with us. And we do begin with that Fox News alert. Just moments ago, the National Guard moving into Charlotte, North Carolina, the city under a state of emergency this morning after a second night of violent police protests.
And the rioters taking over the streets, looting, throwing fireworks. One person opening fire on another protester. Leland Vittert is live for us in Charlotte with the breaking details. Leland, what is the scene like right now?
Ladies, good morning. Downtown Charlotte looks not quite like a war zone, but certainly not like any downtown you'd want to visit. Tear gas canisters now outside the same strip where most of the restaurants and clubs are. This is one of the souvenir shops. People are waking up this morning to news that their companies in downtown may be closed today. A lot of folks saying, a lot of companies telling their employees to stay home from work just because of how dangerous things were last night. And the police were badly outnumbered, and it seemed ill-prepared. They really needed the cavalry, as 4 police officers were injured last night, and the cavalry is on its way in the form of the National Guard now deployed. It'll be out on the streets in a little while. Last night, a number of officers said they really felt like they were restrained. About 8:30 or so, the protest truly took a violent turn to them. There was one shot fired that was heard. One person went down. That man is now in critical condition, fighting for his life. It wasn't until about 10:30 or 11 that they started finally making arrests. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different parts to this story in terms of what caused these riots, but take a listen to some of the rhetoric coming from the protesters.
Just know that all white people are devils.
And make sure you air that one.
Air that.
Don't take that.
All white cops are devils and white people.
Now, that was Keith Scott's brother. He was the man who was shot and killed by police. The social media narrative, if you will, is that he had a book in his hand. According to the police, and they have pictures to back this up, he had a gun in his hand. So that is the spark, and now we are dealing with this on the streets of a major American city in the downtown as the National Guard comes out. The real question going forward is what happens to this in terms of the political fallout from this. Remember, North Carolina is a swing state. We're less than 50 days till the election. Ladies?
Leland Vittert live for us on the scene. Thank you so much, Leland. As that story continues to develop, let's bring in the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Fox News contributor, Dr. Alveda King. Thank you so much for coming in early this morning with us.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning.
You know, we were just talking about some of the things that have gone on and transpired in just the past couple hours since yesterday when all of this happened with the shooting and the death of a 43-year-old man. When that first transpired, the initial riot that happened, there was one individual, at least one, that came out and said, you know, all white people are devils. And you wanted to respond to that.
Across the country, we've seen this outbreak and a fight over skin color. If my dad was here, Reverend A.D. King, my uncle Martin Luther King Jr., they'd say Acts 17:26, one blood. So it's not about the skin color. It's the conditions that are so oppressive. So all white people are not devils. All black people are not angels. It goes so far beyond skin color. I can understand the frustration. And so you will respond to immediately what you see. And that's maybe skin color. But it's the heart that really counts. counts. And I hope that some of the leaders of America can get that message across right now in Charlotte. But every city that's trying to erupt into violence, it needs spiritual leaders, people with wisdom and stability to break through these problems.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, why do you think there seems to be this divide that is greater than it's ever been right now in America, when it comes to race relations?
Well, the divide has been here before. I was in the 1960s. I was a teen. I marched and went to jail over similar things. Martial law was called. Troops were called in. But this is escalating because it's so fast with the social media and everything moving so quickly across the communities. But we can move faster by just telling the truth, and I hope that the media does pick up on some of those leaders that we're calling forth, who are calling for peace and stability and calmness.
And what about the issues with police specifically and the concerns that police target black men?
I really want the viewers to know that I have really good friends in law enforcement myself, various ethnic groups. Right in Atlanta, Georgia, my mother's car was vandalized, and the police department responded quickly and came in to help get the community back in order. So the police departments are not the enemies. You have some bad police officers and some good ones. But do not lump all law enforcement into one little bundle. We've got to allow them to do their jobs.
Yeah, and as you watch some of these scenes unfold, we had one individual, protesters, shoot another individual, another protester, who is now in critical condition. And we have all this damage to all these businesses in their very community where they live.
There are African Americans in communities across America who get up, who pray, go to work, go to school, and do all of that. We want our whole communities, the entire communities, back to work, back to good schools and that type of things. When people are allowed to contribute to a society and help it to be better, then there's less violence and less crime. The crime is not due to skin color. The police brutality is never due to skin color. So we've got to go deeper with these issues, and it's a spiritual matter.
And it's spiritual matter and economic, as you said.
Absolutely economic. If people can go to work and go to school and have pretty decent morals, you have less crime.
We heard that the two candidates that we have running for president right now have made some comments regarding all of this. What do you think about their comments?
Well, I've been listening to Mrs. Clinton, and I think she's right in responding as quickly as she can. Mr. Trump hit the problem even with racism, with skin color. He says if we bring the jobs back home, and if we make sure that people can contribute to this society and not be oppressed and robbed of the opportunity to have dignity. Now, he has said that to black communities, Latinos, white, young, old, and I think he's on a good track.
So do you believe him?
I believe in the American dream that my uncle believed in, and I believe that anybody that at least speaks it can remind us of it and introduce us to that dream again.
Yeah, and you finally you mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King, your uncle. What would he have to say about what is happening in America today?
I believe one of my favorite messages that he always gave, we must learn to live together as brothers, and I added sisters, or precious fools. Acts 17:26. We're one blood. We can be an agreeable community. We can do this.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the positive message for us today. A lot of people need to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Abby?
A message we all need to hear this morning. Thanks, Heather. Well, also breaking overnight, the Tulsa, Oklahoma police officer who shot and killed an unarmed black man is now speaking out for the very first time. And this, as we learned, police found a vial of the hallucinogen PCP in Terrence Crutcher's car. Officer Betty Shelby's attorney says Crutcher refused to follow more than 24 commands, saying she was forced to fire the fatal shot when Crutcher stuck his arm through an open car window. His family claims the windows were closed. Tulsa police are standing by the officer's story.
Well, as we mentioned, the recent police-involved shootings in both Tulsa and Charlotte sparking violent riots and anger all across the country. And now Donald Trump is calling for action as Hillary Clinton takes sides. Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry joins us now live from Washington with more on that. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Heather. Hillary Clinton, you're right, jumping all over these police-related shootings. She's been calling in to African-American radio talk show hosts in various markets, for example, trying to say that she would act quickly, if she's elected president, enact reforms to deal with police-related shootings and try to prevent them. But Donald Trump has also been very aggressively courting African-American voters in recent days and continues to say that Hillary Clinton is all talk and no action on this issue. And interesting, in a town hall meeting with our own Sean Hannity, Trump said these recent attacks from the Clinton camp, charging that he's a racist, tells him he's winning.
When you start to win and win and win, they have nothing to say and they can't stop you. They always start using the racist word. And it's a very interesting phenomenon, but the word racist comes out, and that means that you're winning, and that's their last chance. And I don't think it's working.
We've got to do better. And I know we can. And if I'm elected president, we will. I know I don't have all the answers. I don't know anyone who does. But this is certain. Too many people have lost their lives who shouldn't have.
Now, these police-related shootings in Tulsa and Charlotte also reverberating here in Washington and Congress, the halls of Congress behind me, the Congressional Black Caucus announcing overnight they're planning to head over to another part of the city here to march on the Department of Justice to protest these police-related shootings. It gives you an idea, Heather and Abby, that this issue is not going away.
No, not anytime soon. You hope it calms down, though. Yeah. Ed Henry, Live Force Morning. Ed, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so just 3 days now until the first presidential debate, and Hillary Clinton has just revealed her biggest concern. She thinks the moderators aren't going to be tough enough on her rivals, saying they will, quote, lower the bar for Donald Trump.
Sometimes they are not, the questions she gets aren't difficult, but they are particularly aggressive, and I think that's meant to make up for questions that he can get that can be perceived as difficult for him to answer.
Clinton's communications director says Clinton is going to get more pointed questions since she's released more policy specifics than Donald Trump. Well, the two will finally face off this Monday at Hofstra University.
To another Fox News alert for you. ISIS could be turning to chemical warfare to target our troops. A rocket with possible traces of mustard gas hitting a base housing U.S. and Iraqi troops near Mosul. A Pentagon official says that they found, quote, tar-like black oily substance on a shell that landed just feet from the base. Initial test for mustard gas, those came back mixed, so it is being sent off for more testing. Thankfully, no one was injured.
Also developing right now, the New Jersey, New York bombing suspect's wife is heading back to the U.S. for questioning, and it comes as disturbing evidence emerges in the terror investigation, including chilling new video.
North Carolina under a state of emergency as a second night of violence and chaos erupts in Charlotte. 4 police officers injured last night in all of this chaos as nearly 1,000 rioters took to the streets throwing fireworks, looting stores, and blocking traffic. None of their injuries are life-threatening, but there's one protester who is on life support this morning. Police say that protester was shot by another civilian. This as the aftermath from some of that looting, broken glass doors, merchandise thrown from the shelves and onto the floor. All of this chaos unfolding after police shot and killed a 43-year-old man they say threatened them with a gun. His family says he was unarmed and carrying a book.
Brand new details overnight about the pilot killed after a spy plane came crashing down 17,000 feet out of the air. And now the man who died was Lieutenant Colonel Ira Eady, a father of 6. He and another pilot ejected from the U-2 Dragon Lady jet during a training mission from Beale Air Force Base in California. Well, the other pilot was injured but is expected to be okay. The cause of the crash is still under investigation.
To Chicago now, where they are adding nearly 1,000 officers to the force to combat a surge in violence. 970 positions being added over the next 2 years on the heels of a dramatic spike in shootings. The Windy City recording more than 500 homicides so far this year, more than New York and L.A. combined. Mayor Rahm Emanuel did not say how the financially struggling city plans to pay for the new hires.
The hero officer who killed the Minnesota mom all terrorist, is ready to get back to work. Officer Jason Falconer, you can see him there, returned to his gun range and training facility yesterday to a flood of well wishes from community members thanking him for his bravery. Falconer was off duty and shopping for his son's birthday gift on Saturday night when he took down the 22-year-old terrorist. He really is a hero.
Very, very busy day, busy overnight. Let's check in with Steve Ducey to see what is coming up on Fox and Friends. And Steve, I know that you're going to have much more.
Oh, absolutely. If the governor of the great state of North Carolina is declaring the state of emergency, we're going to be all over it. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump, who would like to be our next president, is going to be dropping by. We're going to talk to him about that and all things political. Also, Ed Rollins is going to take a look at some of the most controversial sound bites of the week and see who came out on top, whether it's Hillary or Donald Trump. Newt Gingrich and Rudy Giuliani are going to weigh in on what's going on across the country as well. So we got a busy 3 hours. Kicks off 12 minutes from right now here on the channel you trust for your morning news.
New polls to talk about, too. It should be fascinating.
We got all sorts of stuff. We got 3 hours worth of stuff and 3 hours of time.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
Polls are good news for Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
And we'll be right back.